pharmacist up in Trinity County. She's facing some legal battles in her area. Thank you for joining me here on the Erin Cruz Show and enlightening America and Californians with what's really going on the ground there, Diane.
Thank you, Erin, for having me. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell us what's going on with the elections up there. I hear you're currently in a legal battle that started in 2016, but this legal battle goes way back, actually before that, because there were problems, right? So when did you guys up there in Trinity start seeing these issues?
Well, in one of the elections in 2012, we were running some good old boys. Very people had done their time and served a lot of people for years, and they were older gentlemen. And we were shocked when they didn't win their supervisorial seats. That people that were out of the area that really nobody knew had won. And we're like, what's going on here? This is so odd. So we're like, okay, we pull up our bootstraps. Let's start again. So in 2014, a very, very popular deputy sheriff ran for sheriff. And when he didn't win, we filed an election, a recount. And he chose me to do the recount. And they were very pushed back really hard on us. And we found out that it was in this primary of June 2014. We found out that the elections officer and the ex-elections officer were in the courthouse in the elections office for the entire holiday, for 3 days, basically. Everybody saw there. They admitted they were there for 3 days preparing for the recount. We're like, what is there to prepare for?
What's there to prepare?
So what are you preparing for? It's a county with about 7,000 voters at maximum, and of course only about 4,000 votes. So we're like, what is the big preparation?
Yeah.
So when we got in there, they wouldn't
votes. You know, you hold them. And then you do the recount. That simple.
Right. Well, this was our first foray into that. So we filed, read the law, we filed. You have to file within 5 days for a recount. So it's a really quick little thing, but then they get their little time to set it up.
Right.
So we had quite a few observers, and we had observers also. We trained with Election Integrity Project. Linda Payne, and she was just getting up and going, and they came up and trained us all, so we knew how to look at the polls. And we were shocked because in every yard was a sign for this deputy sheriff. His name is Mark Potts, and very libertarian,
right?
Very popular, and so we figured something was wrong, and people, put the money together for this recount. It's not cheap for a recount. So when we got in there, they wouldn't let the observers see. They said, only Diane Richards can see all the ballots. I'm like, what? Just my two little eyes. And so luckily one gentleman was very
talk about intimidating, right?
One of the observers a young lady left the room to go to the bathroom. You have to use the restroom. And they said she can't come back in because she left to use the restroom. I mean, they were just making it up as they went. And she couldn't stand right over it. She was just watching me watch the ballots being counted. And what I saw was that they were all marked with the same pen. And our county has a very large population of vote by mail because they closed all the polling places. We only have a few polling places, so you're forced into voting by vote by mail. So, of course, people would use a pencil, a red pen, a green pen, a blue pen, whatever. And I'm like, how could they all have the same marker?
Thick point, you have all sorts of widths of pen. Yes.
Yeah, and then, some people do a check, an X, or whatever, strike, and they're all like, fill it in perfect.
Right.
I was like, something's wrong here. And so in the middle of the count, I said, stop. I want to put all these through the machine now. And and I asked them to bring in the voting machines. Now, these voting machines are Diebold AccuVote, and that was a machine. It's notorious for being able to hack and cheat on. They say third grader, I think it is, an 8-year-old third grader could probably hack it. It's so easy. And so I said, bring them in, and I go, oh. So they bring them in, they stack them up, and then I said, turn them around. And they kind of look like those old-fashioned VCRs when they're not stuck into the black box where all the ballots fall into. And they turned them around, and the seals were either missing or broken on all but one. And I asked the elections officer, I said, what in the world, why aren't the seals on there? Because you have to keep the seals on for like 22 months.
Right. It's serious business. So,
these are like seals that cover a memory card that records has the election, all the candidates' names, and records all the ballots. It's a memory card like you would put like in your computer. These are large, they're like the size of a card because they're old fashioned from the 90s. But like you might use your camera card that you have that you put in your computer. It's like that, but much larger, like the size of a playing card.
but here,
And
Diana,
so,
think about this. Think about this. Even our gas stations have seals which keep, they put them on. They put them on the gas pumps here in the state of California. In many areas, you'll see the one seal. It's across the edge to ensure that those counters that nothing has been breached.
right, so that they can't fix it so that you're getting
right,
less gallons and stuff
right,
like that, because there's a way to program the gallon
right.
amount, so you calibrate them.
It's for
So,
security.
and that's what they do. They're supposed to do with these machines is calibrate them, put the seals on, etc. So I said, well, what's up with this? Why are they all broken? She said, oh, they were damaged in transit. Now, the transit, first of all, we watched the poll workers. They carefully handled them. They put them in these velvet sacks, and then they put a seal on it. It's a little lock. They weren't like dragging them behind their cars.
Right.
That's ludicrous. So that was a lie. It was an outright lie. And so I said, I want to take all the ballots now and put them in the machines and see how the machine counts them down. They're like, oh, no, we can't do that. We'll do that tomorrow. I'm like, no, I want to do it right now. I didn't want to give them time to reprogram. They're like, no, we can't do that. And so that's kind of how we ended, because I was clear that it was the ballots were being remarked, et cetera. Mm. So then that was 2014. We all knew something funny went on, especially with the deputy's race for sheriff. So basically I said, okay, I'm going to run. I'm going to run for supervisor because I can see we're going to have to take this much further. Right. So I ran for supervisor. Another nice lady, a Republican, also a rancher. I'm a rancher. She's a rancher. She ran in the next district, and another gentleman, a cowboy, a true cowboy and patriot, he ran in the other supervisorial district because 3 were up. Right. And you met him actually at the GOP.
Amazing
Mr. Fox.
Gentleman. Amazing gentleman. Yes.
Yeah. And very patriotic. Mm-hmm. And so we all ran, and really, I think we were doing rather well. But what we found out was we had, for instance, along the way, by the way, we had voter registration drives all throughout this in 2010, 2012, 2014. And what we found was that they weren't registering everybody. They were making up all these excuses why you have to have a special address and this and that. We're like, what? Because in our area, our addresses are kind of funny. We don't even get mail service.
So we have to be rural. Right. I mean,
very rural.
Right.
You don't have mail service. So you have a P.O. box, and your address might be whatever you make it up to be, the 3rd mile down Highway 3. It's very, in fact, if you look on the voter registration affidavits, the application people call, but it's an affidavit where you swear that you're 18 years old, U.S. citizen, et cetera. It's really an affidavit. It's on like line 7. It says, if you don't have a real address, just describe where you live, your cross street. So you can say, I live on the highway of Main Street and Highway 3. Right. So that's the law in California. Now, it may be different in other states. So we knew that was funny. So I had hired a very expensive legal law team from Southern California that approached the elections officer and said, why aren't you registering these people? And we had a list of like 30 people that they were not registering, and they wouldn't even answer. And they said, well, you'll have to sue them. So again, at that point, I'm like, oh my goodness, how can you imagine you can't even get your people registered? Just people I didn't even know, just people. In fact, at that time,
talk about
2014,
of the vote. We always talk about access, and as a matter of fact, Democrats fight for access to the vote, right? In terms of registration and accessibility, and they don't want voter ID because they want to make sure everybody can vote. Whoever can vote. And here you can't even, an actual resident, you can't even follow the law and fill out the form and have them accept it as it's filled out for the state of California.
Right, and you're swearing to it. You're swearing that I am a legit, voter. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, most of the people that were not... Mm-hmm. most of the people that not were not registered were also minorities, usually Asians. Some of them were Europeans that had come over. So it was from a fairly poor area with no services, no roads, and everything, real backwoods.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was out there, there's no way to contact them. Like I said, they don't have roads, they don't have electricity, anything. I was standing one day on the crossroads. A gentleman came with me because we had bears and stuff, and he was with me. And you just sort of flag people down, and there's no street signs, no lights, nothing. And you just like someone drive by and you go, hey, and they're like, oh, what are you, broke down? We're like, no, but would you like to register to vote? And they're being all polite. They're like, okay, all right. And so we registered a lot of people, and all of a sudden this particular day was a very, very hot day, and three law enforcement force, U.S. Forest Service, in other words, federal, with like SWAT type vehicles and SWAT gear on, all of a sudden, arrived all at once, like it was a raid. And I like looked behind me because I thought maybe something was happening behind me, that all these cops arrived. And then I said, it's me? And they're like, what?
It's you, Diane.
They came
You're
out.
such a threat to liberty.
Oh, are you kidding? This was crazy. And they had their hands on their guns and everything. And my dog, which I forgot my dog was with me, was a big Mastiff. And she was laying under my car because it was so hot. And I even forgot she was there because she was sleeping the whole time. Like when people would stop, she wouldn't get up or anything. But she knew something was wrong. All of a sudden, there she was. She had run out in front of me between these officers coming towards me, like, very aggressively. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to shoot my dog. I grabbed her and they said, is your dog attacking us? I'm like, if she was attacking you, you would know it, but I held her. And they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm registering people to vote. Are you? And I said, are you interfering with the election process?
Right.
And what they did was they sat there and it sat in their cars there, and no one would come by or even stop. They thought they were, busting me or something. Right. People would come down the road, see them, and turn around and leave again. I mean, it was scary looking.
Right.
And allegedly, only one of these vehicles is in our county. There's only have three of these type of law enforcement operations in our county, only one. And so to have three, they had to call them from outside the area. So someone in our local government, I'm sure, had them go do that to us. So that was, eventually I left because no one would come by then. So that's exactly, they're trying to stop us, everything they've got from registering people, if you can imagine that. And I'll tell you, it was really scary. We have pictures of it, though, because my friend ran around and very sneakily took pictures of them. Right. So we had proof of it, etc. And but anyway, so then when I was running, what we found out, we had a big registration drive. We had a big cultural event for Asian community in my area, my particular district, and hundreds of people came because everybody brought food. It's free food, and to get to know each other, because when you're out in the woods, hardly anybody knows anybody. So it was a big get together, and we registered 96 people. That's a lot of people.
Yes, that's wonderful.
And it was great event, delicious food, wonderful special Asian food. And so then they turned it in. The lady that was running for the other supervisor district, she and her husband and another gentleman who was now running the Election Integrity Project, they turned in the 96 voter affidavits the next day. That was May 19th. And your deadline's May 23rd. We were completely within the deadline. Well, we later found out that they only registered about 30 of them in time. So when all these people showed up to vote on June 7th, 2016, they were told, you're not registered.
Yet their registration was submitted.
That's right. And it's supposed to be valid the day that it is signed and the day that it is received. And it was within the time frame. You have like 2 weeks before the election.
I mean, and here, Diane, I'm going to stop you right here, right now. Because here we have now a situation in 2018 where we saw people had same-day registration. Boy, not only were they totally expedited, but they were given rights that these individuals were not given rights to do. And here, your particular county, Trinity County, had the opportunity of time to make sure that these individuals that had submitted their voter registration via your voter registration drive, they had time to be able to process their requests. But now it's okay to just register them same day and accept them same day, and it doesn't matter. I mean, talk about bias. Talk about disrespect
it's
for the
really
law
corruption.
and process.
It's
Yes.
corruption.
Yes,
It's election corruption. Right. This is what we're dealing with in California. And I will tell you, the majority, almost all the ones that didn't get registered in time, they were all Asian. And they knew that those were going to be supporters of mine. I have a very good relationship with them for years now. And so that was easy to pick them off. It's if your name ended in Lee or Yang, hey, that one's going to be put on this pile on the bottom of the pile somewhere, which again is illegal. It's a federal law and state law violation, very big. This is a big deal. These are felonies, what they're doing here. And so what we decided at the election, the day of the election, they were turning them away. They said, if you want to vote, go all the way, which is like 45-minute mountain road to the elections office. I called the elections officer and I said, is this what you're having done to these people? And she said, yes. And I said, well, are you going to be open till 8 so they can go over there and vote? No. I'm like, well, you can't. You have to be open till 8 or you have to let them vote here. And she's like, just told me not to call her anymore. And so they were really trying. They were confused about the situation. They thought they were registered. She never sent them. In this state and actually across the country, you have to get a notification card. If you register to vote, you have to get a card or a letter from the elections office saying, congratulations, you're now registered as a Republican, Democrat, nonpartisan, whatever, and here's your polling place. Well, nobody in Trinity County has ever gotten one, ever. They decided here in Trinity County, we don't need to do that. Even though the state Secretary of State pays for the letters and the cards, then they pay for the postage. So they can't say they can't afford it. That's baloney. So they completely violated both state and federal law. So nobody had an idea whether they were registered, weren't registered.
Right. On multiple levels in several situations as well.
Oh, I mean, I could go on for about 3 days on the violations. But at the end of the night, I actually, when these particular diebold's, they can push a button and get the count there were over 100 provisional voters, by the way, that day. They let them vote provisionally. Okay. What we didn't know, they had them vote because they said they weren't registered. And I'm sure the majority of them were these Asian people that had registered the week before. So 2 weeks before. So what we didn't know, because we hadn't seen it, was the ballots that they had them using were counterfeit. They weren't real. They were actually fake ballots. Wow. Now, this is a big, big deal because the state of California, if you're elections officer, and in fact, in our area, I'll tell you the actual numbers. We have 7,000, at that time, we had 7,702 voters, which of only 4,488 allegedly voted. But you're supposed to, the protocol is to order 75% ballots of your voter base. So if you have 10,000 voters, you're going to order 7,500 if you're following it. So she did not order 7,702 or 75% of that. She ordered 11,000, way over what our voter registration is. Now, you wonder why, except then if you go back to 2014 where it looks like they remarked ballots, then you might not wonder so much why they had all these extra ballots. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they had plenty of ballots. They did not have to have any. They're not allowed to make up ballots anyways. You cannot do it. Like if the truck carrying your ballots to your county for voting falls off a bridge and goes underwater and all the ballots are lost, the governor has to make a special election for your county. You cannot make your own ballots. There are some special systems where you can make your own ballots, but it's a very expensive machinery system, and it has to be approved by the Secretary of State. You can't just start photocopying ballots. But these were not photocopied ballots. She admitted in the trial she made them herself. She designed them and made them. So they basically had planned to disenfranchise the voters, and they never had any count of how many they printed, how many they sent to the polling places, how many were voted, and how many came back. It was a wild card all the way. So that came out in the trial. But what we did was you have 30 days to file election contests. Right. We weren't filing an election recount because all they let you do is count the ballots they say you can count, not the ones that perhaps the provisionals, et cetera. So we filed the election contest within the 30 days, and the presiding judge of Trinity County dismissed the case. And
this is an important part right here. Now,
Okay,
speak
this
kind of
shows the
slowly because I want people to understand this part. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So you file a thing called a verified election contest statement with the court saying I'm contesting the election, and then the judge has to set the trial within 20 days. It's a very speedy process, and it's mandated by law.
Mm-hmm.
She instead dismissed the case and said you didn't follow the protocol. It should have been 5 days. So we refiled and said what we call reconsideration. Here's the case law. Here's the law. This is not a recount. It's a contest. We have 30 days. She said she denied it. And so we were forced to go to the appellate court just to have this trial, little election trial. Usually they're little and not too complicated. In the court. And
right.
So that took 6 months. It's appellate court, and that's called an expedited process. So in February.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but 6 months, and meanwhile you have the elections probably already been called, right?
Oh yeah, it's been called, and he's been seated in January. So in February, the appellate court asked for an oral argument. In other words, have all the attorneys show up and argue why, this is just a technicality of law. And luckily we got a very, very good law firm, Brad Benbrook and Steve DuVernay, he was the one that did it. He was amazing. And I recommend him for anybody that wants to do something like this, but nobody wants to do anything like this, but if you have to. So anyways,
many people may have to throughout the state of California, in fact, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but go on.
Anyways, it was a beautiful thing. The judges were animated. There were 3 appellate judges animated going, what's going on in Trinity County? How could they have not counted these ballots? So it was they all concurred that we were correct. It was 30 days, and what they call remanded it back to the lower court, go have the election contest. So that was set for July. By the time it comes back, it's all so slow. So now we're basically a year away from the election, and this guy is seated. That allegedly won.
However, he's already making decisions. He's already seated. He's been in there for a year.
And I'll give you an example. I only lost by 28 votes, but I won the polling place. I won there. Oh, at the polling place at the end of the night, the poll workers did not go straight to the elections office with the machine and the ballots. You know where they went?
Right.
To their house. With the machines and the ballots. You can't do that. That's illegal. But that's what they do here because, hey, it's Trinity County. So then they eventually made it to the elections office, and they said I lost by 28 votes. So in the election contest, when it got remanded back, we asked for all the election materials, the ballots, etc., the machine tapes that come out of the machines, everything, so we could see and inspect. And the county council came out, and we filed our subpoenas and said they weren't recognizing our subpoenas. No. And we found out we're using public funds to pay for the other side, this candidate named John Finland, his legal bills were being paid by our tax dollars, which is completely a felony. But they were doing it no matter how many times we told them this is a felony, you need to stop it. We told all the board of supervisors, etc. They continue to this day to pay his bills. And so that's very unfair because here you have to fight City Hall and they're paying all the bills for candidates. So that's illegal. It was decided in the turn of the century you couldn't use any public funds for whether it's initiatives, referendums, or candidates. That's not fair, right? You couldn't have the government paying Hillary's campaign bills, et cetera, and neither, or her legal fees, for instance. You can't have it. They have to pay it out of their campaign funds. So anyway, so when we filed it, we eventually came back and they wouldn't let us have the stuff. So we were doing everything pro per, meaning yourself without attorneys. But when they wouldn't let us have any election materials, we decided we have to hire a law firm.
Right, exactly.
And we did. And they still fought us tooth and claw. No, you can't have this. You can't have that. Everything is a public record. Everything in elections is a public record. No matter what they say, it's a public record. So that's what we fought them. Eventually, we got our first trial date, which was 2.5 years later, which was November, or this past November. the week of Thanksgiving, if you can
Of
imagine.
course.
It's
You know, the
snowing,
most
it's terrible
inconvenient
weather.
time of the
Your
year.
witnesses are in other places, etc. They're all at their family homes across the country.
Hmm.
I'm like, wow, that was very interesting. And then we only went for 2 days at first, and then in the in those 2 days, though, a very interesting thing came out. The supervisor that won, my friend, who's a rancher, she won the other race, and
Right.
she revealed, they were asking why, how come she befriended these Asians and stuff, because she's quite good friends to them as well. And she
How
said, oh,
dare
they're
you?
just,
How dare you
well,
befriend
they
the
asked,
community members
yeah,
as
oh, how
a
dare you
potential
befriend them,
leader?
And so she says, well, they're wonderful people, and they're being shunned, and et cetera. So she told a story that none of us knew. There was a young boy, an eighth grader, Asian boy, who wanted one of her puppies. They're like farm dogs. They're guardian farm dogs. They guard the sheep and the cows and stuff like
Right.
that. Because we have a lot of cougars and bears and what have you. So you have to use these dogs or you won't have any livestock left.
Right.
And he wanted a puppy, and they're so cute. So
And
she
they're
didn't want to
so
give
cute.
it to,
Of course they are.
yeah. Yeah, well, they're a puppy.
I
But
know.
anyway, so she didn't want to just give it to him because, then you don't learn to work, or, she doesn't believe in spoiling kids. So she's raised a lot of kids. She had 6 of her own,
Wow.
as I do. And so she said, you could work on my farm doing farm chores, and then
Oh
after,
no.
a certain
Oh
amount of
no.
hours, and I'll give you a puppy. So he earned his puppy and off he went. Now, he could have come back to work for her, she said, because she would have, he's stacking wood,
Mhm.
firewood, and things like that, little chores.
Like
He
mowing the
never came
lawn
back.
and doing this and that to earn extra spending money and things that
Right.
you'd like
She
as a
thought, well,
child.
maybe he
Erin.
only wanted the puppy. So he never came back. So she just recently saw his parents in the grocery store, and she said, where's your son? He never came back. I loved having him at the ranch. Where's little two? And they said, he's dead. And she's, yes, I'm sorry to go there, but this is what came out in the trial. And he told the supervisor, and said that they found him hung in the forest, with his puppy underneath him crying. Somebody hung this little boy, and probably because he was working for her, being the supervisor that they were opposed, this corrupt government. And it was reported to the sheriff's department, but it was not investigated. There's nobody knows anything about how this happened. No little boy who just got his little puppy is going to hang himself. I can tell you right now, no eighth grader hangs himself. And so this is something, again, we don't have any investigations of the murders and what have you that happen here. People just disappear. So this was a huge shock for us during the trial. We were all crying, but there were 2 people that weren't crying in the room, the elections officer and the county council. And the
How
county
can you
council
not be
said,
how can you not be moved by such a tragedy? I'm hearing this and I'm starting to get teary-eyed. I mean, the racism, the tensions there, the obstruction in terms of the elections and allowing people to vote, and you have this huge issue with intimidation, even by law enforcement, as it sounds, and then you have a child who is obviously murdered or suspicious death, and nobody does an investigation, and nobody in the
yeah,
courtroom
can you
is
imagine?
touched by this.
Right?
Not a community
Yeah,
member.
this is how
And
deep the corruption is. We are talking about probably the most corrupt county in the United States. I'm sorry, but
no,
this is
don't
where we're at
apologize. You
here.
do not need to apologize for the reality which we are facing here in California, because we currently have socialists in urban areas, using tactics to sway the vote in their direction. We saw 1.5 million people are removed off the voter rolls and all of this. We have unprecedented amounts of voter fraud or corruption or what have you from the highest levels up at the Secretary of State, because they can take care of these situations. But then we have now a situation where you're seeing that an entire community of Asian Americans, as it seems, is being facing racism to the point of possible death of a child. I mean, this is
Yes,
beyond.
it's in fact
This is
they don't give
beyond.
them
This is
services. They pay their taxes, the roads are taken care of, they don't snowplow, they don't grade them, they have no electric, no water, no sewer, you name it, they don't have it. And they don't let them build. They make all kinds of excuses why they can't. They're living in shacks out there, hovels. And they tell them, if you try to build anything, we're going to, it's a long story, but you
But
brought up the Secretary of State.
Right. As it relates
I
to
want
the
to tell you about
elections,
the Secretary of State.
this is a real threat. Right. Go ahead.
The Secretary of State in 2014, when I was running the Election Integrity Project, because I wasn't running for office, we had every polling place covered, et cetera. We were able to document hundreds of violations. People wrote out their complaint for the Secretary of State. We mailed it off to the Secretary of State. Election Integrity Project helped, shuttle that through too, and nothing was done by the Secretary of State. Nothing to see here. And this is what you call not voter fraud.
Nothing from the governor. Nothing. Nobody blinked an eye.
A complete denial that there's any problem here. And this is what you call election fraud. So you have voter fraud where voters are cheating. And if you have very massive systemic voter fraud, then you know that the elections official has to be complicit in it, just to let you know. But what we have here is actually the election fraud of the election official and the people working.
I don't think you're unique, quite frankly. I don't think you're unique at all. And I go back to my run for U.S. Senate against Dianne Feinstein, where I had to get nomination forms, right? And individuals have to sign them, put their registered address, and do all the formalities. And you submit them to each county for which you collected the signatures. And counties range between 11% rejection rate and about 30, depending on which county it was. LA County had over a 66% rejection rate of my signatures.
Wow.
Talk about wondering where the disconnect is. The groups of people I was receiving signatures from were staunch Republicans in gatherings where obviously they're politically active. Obviously they're somebody who, knows how to fill out these forms. But you wonder, is this bias? Is this, actual complete election fraud by the county registrar's office, in terms of being completely overboard on their analysis of these signatures, and finding just little something, or are they just completely writing them off? It's really unclear. I did end up
I will tell you,
but I think there's a bigger problem here, and it's not just Trinity County.
Right. You're right about that. In fact, there was a case, I believe it's somewhere up here. It might have been Alameda County, where this young man tried to vote several times, and each time in a major election, they were rejecting his signature. So the ACLU took up his case, and it was finalized, I believe, in 2016, where it said the appellate court, they took it to the appellate court, I believe. I don't think it went to the Supreme Court, but appellate court of California, and they said, you have to accept these signatures. This is ridiculous because nobody is a handwriting expert.
Right.
And so this happened. A lot of the votes that did not get counted, a huge amount, a very high percentage of votes did not get counted in my my district, for instance, several precincts. And on there was SM, signature match. That's just ludicrous. It's like, do they really think that there's someone coming out of the woods to cheat on the election?
Seriously.
So this is, like you say, it's a way of knocking them out.
Right.
That's how they knock them out. And so this has to stop as well. We don't want people who aren't legit using them. However, it's very easy to see maybe one loop looks like it, maybe the rest doesn't, but you can see the major capitalized letters of Mary, the M, that should be pretty static.
Right.
And then as people get older, they write a little, more scribbly when they get older. Your signature isn't as great. And so they're supposed to take that into account. And it always says to decide liberally for the voter. Well, these elections offices aren't, for instance. And I'll tell you where another thing, there is in Sonoma, County of Sonoma here in Northern California, they have these Diebold machines too, which again are the worst of the worst. There isn't anything worse than they are. And instead of pushing the button at the polling place to see what the result is, they just pack them up and they take them to elections office. So everybody in the polling place doesn't even know what it was. There's no reason not to let them push the button and let the machine count it right there.
Right.
Why are they requiring it to go take them all, bundle them all up in every polling place and take them to the main site and so that they can push the button? That's ludicrous. So
Right.
again, they have these little rules that this is the ways that they steal elections. They are stealing our elections in California. I get so upset when I hear across the nation, like, oh, you Californians, you're just a bunch of this and that's, right? And you're electing these people. And I keep saying, we're not electing them. We produced Ronald Reagan, and don't you forget it.
Right,
and
absolutely. Absolutely. Not only did we produce a governor and then pushed out to become president, one of the most impactful presidents in terms of Republicans that we've had in recent history. Now, I want to take you back real quick, back to the 2016 situation with your supervisor issue, because you sent me some of these documents, and one of the things I want to talk to you about was how they used the argument for the primary election. Do you recall that area of the?
Yes.
Yeah, I want you to kind of go over that, how they used kind of juxtapositioning, if you will, to make their argument rather than really looking at the process of how things work and explain to the people some of the ways that they're manipulating.
Using the court and trying to use the law. They said that in a primary election, you have only 5 days because it's a very fast election because you have to get ready for the general election. But the supervisor race commuted to a general election because there was no runoff. So it becomes general. It is not a primary because there were only 2 people running, etc. So we argued that, and it was very interesting in the oral argument where our attorney was saying, well, it's clear, it's black and white. You can really tell it's 30 days. It said, in fact, you could have 6 months to file election contests if it's very egregious, like bribery and stuff like that. You could take 6 months because you have to sometimes ferret this stuff out. Mm-hmm. But so it was so funny because it wasn't funny, but you have to think. Think back. I have a strange sense of humor. Okay. But the justices, this appellate court justices, kept saying to the other side, you have no other eggs in your basket. How you're admitting it's a general election, so therefore the 30 days applies. Well, Your Honor, but they might ask for a recount. They're like, no, they don't have to ask for a recount in an election contest. So they kept saying, is there anything that they were trying to pull it out of the guts of this attorney that was representing this candidate that's being paid by our tax dollars and could not bring any other argument. So it was really under the general election. It was very, we understood it. I'm not a lawyer. I understood it to be 30 days.
When I read it, and some of these things they make out to be, well, you're not an attorney or you're not this or that. Elections should be able to be understood by the general public is how I look at this. It's like the U.S. Constitution. It's basic. It should be very basic because what other way can we be involved in the process, right? It shouldn't be so cumbersome that we can't deal with these things ourselves. Otherwise, we end up with a corrupt government that, as you're seeing, that bully tactics the regular folks from running for office and actually being a citizen-run community and government organization. I don't think we should have these big power mongers in there. Our government should be run by us, we the people, and we should be able to run and do so and fight these things with the understanding that the materials are that basic. And as you saw, I could read it, you could read it, and it was easy to understand. The judge was laughing basically at your opposition, saying anything else, But the biggest thing I see here is intimidation. Intimidation. Try to make the process so thick and hard and rough and uncomfortable that you just give up. And the thing that you didn't do was you didn't give up. You kept fighting. And that's something that I want Californians to see, that we have the ability to make impact in our communities like you did. But we have to continually and constantly be looking at the real issues, which are on the community level like yours were. What do you have to say to people in terms of educating them on the process and how to take action? Because, we talk about a lot of these problems and the corruption, and even up to, murder, potential murder of a community member. When you're facing this sort of thing, how can community members just like you get involved in their towns to combat the corruption? Because we need those solutions.
Well, we basically started with our Tea Party. And we got a lot of people got involved in our Tea Party in the county. It grew, and so we call it a Patriot Party, but it's Tea Party. And then we said, well, what can we do? We can get people elected, but we found out you can't get elected. So we realized we have to do this sort of struggle. But one of the things that we found out was that there are ways that, even though, they're using paper ballots, but they're manipulating them. So there is a way to even still use machines, but you have to get rid of all the machines we have. There are machines that scan it and can load it in real time to the internet so that you will see every ballot count that is voted. Now, it won't have their name on or anything, but you can count, 100 votes for Erin and 100 votes for Dianne Feinstein. You can count that, and they can put on the internet. So you could be sitting there eating your, dinner and count them as they pass by, and you can upload it to your computer, et cetera, look real time on it, or live streaming, that kind of thing. So there are voting machines that will count it and upload it, so you can see real time those ballots, and you can count if you want to count the presidential, you want to count the senator. So there's a way to do it and still have machines, although there has to always be a paper ballot, and they really need to be under lock and key. And that's the thing we found. In ours, we're not only like one or two people have those keys, et cetera. Nobody can get to the ballots. So there's a whole process. But contacting Election Integrity Project would be probably the first thing, so you can learn what you're supposed to be looking for. They can also contact me. You can have my phone number. You can give it out to people. I don't care, because we really know we've gone through the very depths of this corrupt system.
Right. And you mentioned Election Integrity Project. I've spoken with, Linda Payne, and I've had Reef Weiss on the show. And we continually push people in counties to get involved and get their GOP, their Tea Party groups, whoever it is, together and to get trained. They do online trainings, they do in-person trainings and workshops. They're expanding. They're going through this fight with LA County. They're going to be doing further investigations, I think, into Orange County. They're really trying to do great things, but people have to get involved. And that's why I also started Restoring America Now, the humanitarian side as well as the Action Fund side. And we're going to be offering basically a portal or a web page, if you will, to all of the different areas where people can get resources from the state, the feds, all the way down to the local and Election Integrity Project, because part of it is there's so much information out there that people don't know where to go. And people like you have so much valuable information to share, and wisdom and experience. And we need to, this is part of our Patriot Connection, connecting patriots and patriots, and keep that conversation going. So with your permission, I'd like to add your information on our portal so people can reach out if they have questions as well, because, the government isn't the be-all, end-all. We need to report these things officially and go about it. It's a very, important process to make sure it has its checks and balances and that communities and counties are following the laws. But I think that sometimes as patriots, we need to have that support system in place, encouragement in place. They make it so complicated, that just knowing that other people have been there and have guidance and support is so important. So important.
Yes, we'll be happy. You can put my information up, all my information. I don't care. The bad guys already have it, so the good guys can have it.
Now,
but
now you
basically,
sound like me. Now you sound like me running for office. Erin, why did you run for office? Because I'm fed up. I'm fed up, and in order to change the process, you need to be a part of the process, right?
Right, and I will tell you, I want people to run for office. Run for the school board, run for the dog catcher, whatever. Just run.
Yeah, just be a part of the process. Right.
Because they have all those seats. They're totally infiltrated. Liberals, Democrats, corruption. I mean, right now, we're still in the trial. They had 2 days of the trial in January, 3 days in February. sorry, November, then 2 days in November, 3 days in January, and now we're waiting for more time in March, which again is the corrupt court that is causing this to happen, where we should just have 1 or 2 weeks of the
And
trial,
when
and
is that?
instead it's broken up like this.
So, and when is that election coming up again? So they're going to further.
In two. In like 2 years. So
Right.
he's still got 2 more years, so I could get in and still make a difference. But I will tell you, in the meantime,
Not unless you
the
clean that
ex
up.
supervisor, this I want to tell you because people need to understand the realities, and I don't mean to scare people, but
No,
this is the way it goes.
it's not
They put
about fear.
up
It's
on,
about truth.
yeah, on Facebook, the our local Facebook page for my town, the ex supervisor in the other county that lost over there to my friend encourage people to run me out of town. In the meantime, they've shot and killed my dog, and they shot and killed my horse. And this is just in the past 3 months to try to scare me. The sheriff has been
The
here,
horse that we
etc.,
have
very
in the
aware of the
picture.
situation. Pardon me?
This is the same horse we have in our picture. Is that?
No,
Okay.
that was her buddy. That was his girlfriend. It was a white horse, a parade horse, very highly trained. And we went out one day to go shopping for 2 hours, and he came back, and there were 2 bullets in his head. And the same with my dog. I caught who did that, and the DA is not prosecuting. I literally caught him doing it, and it was a puppy, a 5-month-old puppy. This is the tactics they use. In fact, I believe my car was sabotaged. I went to a funeral this past weekend, and all of a sudden my drive shaft fell out when I was driving it, which on a car where it's a 1,000-pound, pressure on the bolts to keep them in place. It's a 4-wheel drive car, so it's not like a little Corolla or something. This is a very stout car. To have your drive shaft just fall off, obviously somebody tampered with my car. So you have to be willing. You have to understand that it's not easy. But our founding fathers gave up their fortunes, their families, their lives even, to give us this wonderful country. So believe me, we're in a war. It's good against evil. That's what it is. It's not even about the law. This is a struggle, because the law is pretty decent. It is a struggle of good against evil.
Well,
God against Satan.
And Satan.
You choose your side.
Absolutely, absolutely. Diane, I have to tell you, you have our support 100%, 1,000%, and I know you're not alone. I mean, it sounds extreme, but I've seen the intimidation tactics. I've experienced them, the death threats, and I have nobody shot my dog, praise the Lord, but they'll do anything to stop us from doing what's right and what's good. And I'm just so proud of you, to call you a friend and call you a fellow woman of Christ and sister in Christ. And we're right there with you, and we have your back. Anything that we can do, community members can do to reach out and help you. I don't know. Do you have a legal fund set up where people can donate? These are some things that maybe people can contribute.
We did at one time. I don't know if we still have it. I can look and see if we still have it up and send it to you. But one of the things you can do is actually call the governor's office, call the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and say, when are you going to investigate Trinity County? Right. The corruption through the court, just about every department. And you can imagine what they're doing to me, what they're doing to people that are poor, the Asian community and the poor, the elderly. They are attacking them, controlling them. They are all frightened. They're truly frightened. The electorate here is frightened. I'm not frightened. I tell them, take a number and get in line, stand in line, because I'm going to do this. I have 6 children. I am not leaving this fight to them. I'm going to do my part. Hopefully I can make a difference, but you don't leave this for our future generations to do.
No,
we have to do it.
Not. We have to do it. It's our responsibility. I just want to tell you, it's time for our interview to end. I do want to have you back on the show, Diane, and get an update and really hear a lot more about maybe what comes out of some activism that maybe we can help send your way, and then also with the court situation. But I want to encourage folks right now, please get involved, speak out about Trinity County. Write the governor, write the AG, let them know what you've heard today, how much it means to you to have them take action against the corruption there that Diane and her community are facing. This is very serious stuff. We all play a part. We're in this together. We're all facing a lot of different battles, yes, but we need to make the time and make these situations a priority. The Democrats never stop. The progressives never stop. We need to be, a lot more active and take that time, make that time to make a difference in our communities. Diane, thank you again for being on the Erin Cruz show and sharing your testimony with us. We're just so grateful to have your voice out there fighting for California.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Remember, we can take California back one county at a time.
Absolutely. And we're going to start with Trinity, and we're going to start with Riverside and San Diego. Okay, we're just going to do them all. We're going to have to all work together, though. Yes? Amen?
That's right. Amen.
God bless you,
Amen,
Diane.
sister.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, I'm here.